So this is my prototype experimental pins jig, and this is the dovetail part of the jig, and I built these just as a test, and I've already realized there's a whole bunch of improvements I could make to this, so I designed a better one and we're going to build it in this video. So I've printed out the plans and I've got perspective drawings for some of the pieces, and for some of the plywood parts I actually printed out as 1-to-1 so I can just punch through those for the screw positions. There's really not much to these jigs. For the material I'm going to be using pieces of 2x6 and 2x4. And I got a chunk of maple for the hardwood parts here. And for the plywood, I bought a 1/4 sheet of birch ply from the Home Depot. So I've just cut the plywood pieces, which are the bases and the backs. And next I need to cut the spruce parts, which are these bits here and here. So that's always a risk when cutting up construction lumber. Sometimes there's internal stresses and it'll clamp down on the blade. Now if I had a riving knife that would be better, but this saw can't take riving knives. The question is always, do you try to ram it through or do you back it out? The important thing is never let go, and I've never had a case of kickback with that kind of thing happening. Next I need to cut this dado for this piece to fit in here, and I'm cutting that off of this piece here, and I'm just going to use the drawing and mark approximately where that goes. So as usual, I'm too lazy to put in a dado blade, so I've got the fence set to 1 stop with a dado, and on here I've got this block so I can just make a series of cuts. So now I just need to cut off a tiny bit more to make that fit. So these measure about 772 and 773, and my slot is 753, so I should bring the fence in by about 20 thou. So I'm just going to use a thou indicator to verify that. So setting that to 0, let's move it by 20 thou. And that makes for a nice and snug fit in the slot that still slides easily. So I need my bases to go right on the middle of the blade like so. And that means I need to cut the slot, the guide bar right here. So to make that cut safer to cut, I'm going to flip my workpiece around and put it like so, and then put the fence here and just make a series of root cuts. So I was going to cut these slots a little bit too narrow and gradually widen them until I got the perfect fit. But it turns out the first time I tried it, it actually already fit perfectly, so I was lucky it didn't go over. So next I need to mark the screw positions, and I'm just going to use my 1-to-1 paper templates, so I won't have to measure the positions for any of the holes. So for the holes for the guide bar, I actually have to make sure these center on the guide bar, because the guide bar position may be different from where it is in the plans. So I'm just going to position the template a little bit off to the side, and now I can mark these holes. And next I need to position the template so that it's exactly on the piece of wood, so it lines up on all sides. And now I'm going to punch the other mounting holes. And while I'm at it, I'm going to mark some of these lines here just through the template with a chisel. And I might as well mark the other base as well while I'm at it. this fits on here like so, and then this on here. And I still need to screw those things together. So the holes go in here, and they're all 1.5 centimeters from the edge. So I'm just going to mark these with a caliper. So I just drilled the screw holes in here, but before I screw these two parts together, it helps to make the things that go on here and mount them on here. So that's what I'll do next. So for those hardwood parts, I'm just going to use my 1-to-1 paper templates, so I won't have to do a lot of measuring. So I have to be very careful when I place these templates on here, that the edge of the template is exactly on the edge of the piece of wood. Next I have to drill the holes for the screws to go in here, and I have to sink it in here. And that would have been much easier before I cut this out, so I'll have to put a note on the plans about that. But in the meantime, with a pilot hole, these won't be that difficult to drill. So these holes need to make a very snug fit with this shaft here, but it's really hard to get this one in. So to get them up to the right size, I took another piece of this shaft and roughened up the front of it, so I can use that as a reamer. And that allows me to expand the holes so that the shaft fits snug. I want it to be in there with friction because I don't want to have any play. So now I can finally mount these blocks on here, and the bottom of these is 7.9 millimeters from the top. So marking that with the calipers, here's a scratch line that I need to line it up to. And when I put these on here, I have to make sure that that shaft is going to end up exactly parallel with the wood. So let me just clamp that on here. Let's set the marking gauge to one side of this. Moving it down here. Yeah, they're not parallel, so I need to move this one over a little bit. That's good. Now I'm just going to mark where the pilot hole needs to go just by putting one of these screws in here, and the point will mark the wood. Now in the future I want to put these on exactly the same way. So now I'm just going to mark which one was where. A, B, B. Now I can mount this block on here, and to get the pilot hole positions for those screws, I just have to make sure this is totally flush here, and I'm going to use the same method. I'm going to use these screws to punch the pilot hole location. And with the pilot holes drilled, I can now put this together. And this is part A, so that goes where the A is. Now this part fits on the base, and I've already got my screw holes pre-drilled, so I just have to line it up with those lines here, which is where I punched a chisel through the template before. And now I can punch my pilot holes through here. So as I was drilling the pilot holes here, I noticed my drill was hitting the screws here because these line up exactly. So this is very useful. I will make an adjustment in the plan. I'll move these screws a little bit this way so that when you build it, you won't have that happening. With this base mostly done, I'm now going to make the part that mounts on here. And this part's going to have a whole bunch of holes drilled in it, so I'm just going to use the template to mark where the holes need to go. So lining all that up. And there's also a notch that needs to be cut out at the top of it, so I'm going to mark that through the template so I won't have to attach it to the wood. There's also a notch that's going to come out the bottom here, but that's going to get cut with a table saw, but just to get a center reference, I'm going to put a mark through the template. So next I need to glue a ledge to the bottom edge of this board, which will help support the stock as I'm cutting it. So while I'm waiting for the glue to dry here, there's a little block that needs to go in here. And I've got a template for that, but I'm just going to mark on here. It just needs to fit behind this other block, and the purpose of this block is when the saw blade's making cuts, this helps deflect the sawdust down into the table so it doesn't spread all around back here. And I'm just going to mount this block with a dab of glue. And I'll clamp that in place right where it is. And while I'm still waiting for the glue to dry, I'm just going to screw in the miter slot bar, and let's mark those holes. And very important, to make sure I'll put it the same way again, I'll mark an X here and here. So I've just pre-drilled that and putting it back in the same place. I can now screw it on. I still need to drill some holes in this part here for some screws to go in here, and those will serve as the stops for when we put this part on here and it'll tilt. And those screws have to be 2 centimeters from the end. And they have to be 6 centimeters from the bottom. That'd be here and here. And for safety, I'm just going to punch those. Now the next tricky part is they have to be at a 10-degree angle. So I've set this to a 10-degree angle, and I'm just going to eyeball that with the drill, hoping that it's all level. So now I can start building up the pivoting mechanism. And this block, I haven't fully cut this to shape yet, but that's actually convenient so it doesn't pivot. So putting these guys in here, and run the shaft through here. It's a little tight. And now some 2mm thick spacers for down here. And the board, and if I put that on here so it's centered, let's just fix that in place. The screw holes should all line up with the pieces behind if these are exactly in the right position. So now I can punch the center holes for all those holes. So I've just pre-drilled the screw holes in here, and I've cut this guy to the right shape so it can tilt. So now I should be able to just screw this on here. There we go. So this jig can pivot to make basically the cut between the pins at different angles. And to adjust which angle it goes to, I'm just going to use this angle gauge here, and you can see it goes to about that angle here. I'm just going to mark that because that's a 10-degree angle, and I need to bring that screw out so that it hits. Now the hole here doesn't line up, but if I tilt it this way, I can get in there with a screwdriver and adjust that screw. There we go, so that's 10 degrees, and now I can just do the other thing the same way. So let's see how this thing does. So we got a tapered slot for a dovetail. Now I just need to finish the dovetail jig.